Hello everyone, welcome to another session of SP Skills. Today we're going to do a mock interview. Varun is going to be a mock interviewer and Nitish is going to be candidate. So with this, I would hand it over to these folks. Over to you folks.
So
Now,
regarding the,
let's.
sure, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to ask the question for the recording. So we are planning to design a hospital beds booking platform. And Nitish, over to you.
So my first question is like, do we want some servers at the hospital ends to send the availability to us, or we will be the we will be handling those things like the availability things, that if that particular bed is available or not. This information has to come from the hospital end, or we will be keeping that.
Well, that's what we are designing, right? So it should be part of our platform.
Yeah. Okay. So booking and reservation of the beds. Okay, so and will there be like any premium, and so there will be different tiers of bed available?
You can assume, let's keep it simple. So there are beds available. So that's okay if you want to keep it on different tiers, but for simplicity, we can just take it as one tier, if that's okay.
Okay. Uh, okay, so do we want to provide a search functionality that I want all the beds available in my area and then I want to book it, or I will just list down all the hospitals available and then client can, or the user can book it?
So we can assume like it's one hospital. It may have different branches. So you can, provide list of available hospital or branches and then available beds.
Of hospitals and available beds with branches. All right. Yeah, so my question was like, will there be any search functionality that we will be providing, that if we have like all the beds that are available and then user will be able to, I mean, search on hospitals?
Okay, we can keep that. That's
Okay. Search on hospitals and then simple reservation. So we will be calling the payments, we will be using third-party apps, right, for the payments?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I think this will be a functional requirements. What else I'm missing? There's and yeah, so different hospitals can have their different charges.
So think of it like there is this one hospital, and we are building the platform for that hospital. So it's not like there are 5 different hospitals, just one hospital, but then it may have 3 different branches from 3 different locations. So you are still, yeah, when you're searching for hospital, basically you're searching for branch of that hospital. Like, I don't want to have a bed here, or maybe I want to have a bed on a particular location.
Okay, got it. Different branches. Okay. And in all these branches, the like fees will be same, or it can vary?
For simplicity, let's just keep it same. I mean, a bed is a bed.
I can't hear you. Is it the issue from my end?
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I just missed it. Can you please?
Yeah, I'm just saying for simplicity, let's just keep the price of bed as same across all the branches.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, whatever treatment anybody is getting there, the prices are for that. So for now, we are just planning to book a bed, if it's available.
So I think for functional requirement, I think we are good with this. We can add like backtrack later if you want to add it. Please let me know if I'm missing anything. So then I will just go ahead with the non-functional requirements and schemas and API design.
Yeah, please proceed.
Sure. So for non-functional requirement, I would say we definitely want the consistency. Then, okay, and in the cap, so we will be having CP consistency, and it's not like we will be like
What is CP?
if in the cap theorem we want consistency as well as partition tolerant. We might be like doing a trade-off between the availability and consistency, because based on the cap theorem we can only have two from the consistency, availability, and partition tolerant, because we want to make it distributed and scalable. So we can do that. So we want to have it distributed, right? We are not planning to have a monolithic application.
Yes.
Sure. Okay, so it has to be horizontally scalable. Horizontally scalable, and so okay, and it has to be not not much downtime. That means A we want slightly higher. A will be I think okay, and for coming to like for the API designs, what all things we want to design. So I think first, let's suppose we want to onboard a new branch itself. So first we need an onboarding or
Can we
like
have some kind of, sorry, I'm just a question. Can we have some kind of high level design in terms of some kind of diagram or something, and then we can drill down on some piece of it, because it may take
yeah. So
lot more time.
yeah, I'll just go through it like that's how I like move. Like first we will go through the functional and non-functional API design, and then schema, and then we can jump to the high level after like a few traffic analysis, constraint analysis.
Okay.
Sure. So are we planning to have an onboard API, or since it's a booking system, or we can just or we are planning to key focus on the booking and reservation only?
The
Or
booking and
we want
reservation
to,
is our prime functionality. All the branches are already there, so you don't have to worry about that piece.
all right. So we will get a reserve bed API, and in this we want to get the hospital ID. We want to get the hospital ID, and we want to get the bed number as well, and we also want the period from and to, like from which date to which date I want. I think in hospital it's basically like it can be extended. Let me just think. Do we want to have this feature, or we can extend it anytime?
Sorry, what is the question again?
So do we want client to give us the full window that from and to where they will be booking, or we can just get the from where they want to book the date and then we can extend later? I think it should be ideal because in the hospital case, this is, I think, usually happens.
Generally, you can say like, I need it for this particular date, and then from there it depends on the doctor for how long they want to keep you. But I mean, if you want to assume that you want to give it a start date and end date, that is also fine.
So let's just keep, from only, and I will also keep metadata. Yeah, please.
So who is going to call this API reserve bed?
Yeah, so our client, our apps will be able to call this, our front end, our mobile or web client front end.
Okay.
Sure. So reserve bed will be this, and this will give just success, or like it will give 200, or if created. And what else do we want? Yeah, do we also want to support the cancellation of booking also? Cancellation of the,
Let's have it.
yeah, sure. So cancel that, and I think for the reservation ID we can return the reservation ID itself in this API, and when the person wants to cancel this, he can just cancel the reservation based on this. Okay, what else? I think this should be good. And coming to the DB schema, so yeah, so for this, there will be a one hospital table, and we have row beds table. We have. Is someone seeing something?
No, I think it's some background noise. That's okay.
Yeah. So we will have our beds table and hospital table, and since we want to have our consistency, we are dealing with the consistency. I think we can keep this in some ACID based database, so we can use MySQL. So in this table we will be having our hospital ID.
So can you please elaborate on that? So you mentioned that we are talking about consistency, and then you said MySQL. So what's the relation there?
So we want to have a transaction based system. We do not want to have one particular bed allocated to two different people. So to deal with that, I want to have this particular thing because DB schema itself. And since there is one more thing is this data won't be huge. Our hospitals and number of beds, it won't be huge. So that will be okay to deal with the MySQL. If there was huge data, then we can go ahead and thought of some NoSQL, but I think this should suffice.
Okay, so basically you're saying that because the data size is not big, and so that's the reason why we are going for relational databases versus NoSQL databases.
Plus, we want consistency and transaction. We are doing our query pattern is basically we want to have it transaction based. We want all the ACID properties, atomicity, consistency, and isolation.
Yeah, again, so okay, so that's the reason why we are going for relational database. Okay.
Yes. Sure. So we will have ID and name, and let's suppose we will have a branch ID also. For some purpose, let's just keep it. Okay, so and for bed, we will have ID of the bed and we will have the hospital ID for which this particular bed belongs to, and let's okay, and what else? And we will have like the charge price for this bed, and in other will be our reservation table, reservation, and here we will be having our ID, reservation ID, and for which hospital I have hospital ID, and oh yeah, and the bed number also will be there, and from, and just keep the metadata also. All those things we got, we'll keep it here. So since like these things, yeah, okay, cool, sure. So I'll just go ahead with the constraint analysis. Constraint analysis. So what is like the number of transactions, uh, number of transactions we are targeting, like per day basis, let's suppose, and let's call, keep it this, and what is the daily active user we will be having in this particular platform? uh, I think, I don't think like since this is a hospital, there won't be, I mean, very daily active user. We can directly go ahead with the number of transactions. So if we see like how many transactions per minute we are handling, let's suppose. So is it okay if I keep like 1K transaction per minute for our system?
Even that seems a little high because it's a hospital's, bed booking platform, but that's okay. For simplicity, we can keep it like that.
Okay. And so okay, so mhm. Okay, and we will be keeping our latency like below 100 ms itself. Won't be like very high latent system. And what else we can do is coming to like the database size. uh, uh, what this could be, I think this ID will be, let's suppose, 8 bytes. We are keeping 8 bytes plus name will be, let's keeping it 8 bytes again, and branch ID 8 itself. So 24 bytes, 24 bytes per entry. And coming to this, I think it would be same. Let's keep it this one. We can keep it.
So, what calculation is that?
So I'm just trying to calculate how much GBs or data we will be requiring and for how much duration. So I'm just scoping out for, let's suppose we are building the system for a year or 5 years. So how much data capacity we will be needing for that.
Okay.
So yeah,
So Nitish, I think we have about 20 minutes left. So can we go into some kind of, diagramming, and because I have some specific questions around at a very high level. So this is good, but let's go over and start writing it down or designing it.
let's this is our client, and there will be our load balancers here, load balancer, and there will be our we can have multiple app servers. We can have multiple app servers. Okay, and I can scroll here. Yeah, so there will be a DB. We can have our let's delete this. There will be our database. Like here also there will be multiple we can have a multiple instances of our DB, so keeping an abstract layer in front of it. And let's call this app server. Yeah, app server 1. I'm just thinking out loud. Just give me a second. I'm just trying to see like how the request flow will happen. So keeping, we will try to first go through the reservation bed API. So client will hit our load balancer, and from this load balancer, it will reroute to one of our app server, and one of our app server will talk to load balancer that okay, I want to reserve this particular seat, and the reservation will happen, and we can simply then return the result, and the flow will happen like this. What things we can what else we can do is we can have
A question here is suppose a client. So first of all, this client is a
let just give me a second. I'm just trying to finish it. Not yet completed. Just give me a second. Sorry for that. Yeah, I was just thinking out loud. There are a few things that are still missing. I know. So there will be a cache for read queries. Read queries, and yeah, so when a reservation will come to us, we can simply do just and for the read queries it just this 5 is okay. And then there will be a, let's suppose we have our payment service. So what we can do is basically we can have a like we will be doing our what we call as slow I'm not logging. Yeah, we will do the soft reserve. So we will do a soft reserve for like 10 minutes window if whenever our this particular call is made. So what the flow will look like is basically yes, okay. I'll just write down also. So this will be first request, and here will come to second. We will do the check and see if we are able to do the soft reserve. Then we will call our payment service, and payment will give us the token. After token, we will do the hard reserve. In the hard reserve, and then we will simply return this particular thing as 5 and then 6. And when there is a reservation cancel, then we can simply do a reservation cancel, and for the refund, sorry, I'm not sure like how to move this. So basically what we can do is, for the cancellation is, we will be having a queue, messaging queue. Let's suppose we have Kafka, and in the consumer side, we will be refund. Let's call this some refund service. So when there is a, we will unreserve the particular bed, and then we will call this, we will keep an event in Kafka, and then we can return. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so you said client. So is this a web client or mobile client, or what kind of client?
It can be any client, as far as he is able to use our API.
Okay. So you're saying the mobile client is also going to use the same APIs.
Yes.
And then how do you maintain high availability here? So I see there is behind the load balancer, you have number of servers. Are they in the same availability zone, or how do you do that piece?
So it depends. Like, do we want to keep our things at a data center level or at a different data centers? We can keep this like app servers itself in a different data centers, and then we will send those data to the client. So it's not like these are only like these servers can reside anywhere. Like, it's not like decoupled with data centers. We can have a what we can have is, we can have two load balancer, one for, let's suppose, DC data center 1 and one for data center 2.
Let's say because it's not a very too many transactions are not happening at the same time, like we discussed earlier. So let's say I want to keep track of how many servers are up and available at the same time. How do we do that piece? Like, how do we make sure that we don't spin up too many servers and spend too much money just to keep it available, but at the same time we don't want to go too low? So what do we do for that?
Yeah, so that's a good point. We can have a monitoring service, so where we can simply keep pushing what is the current QPS that are getting we are getting in, and then based on that we can like tune the number of containers and like the servers we are spin up for our job. And this will like power the dashboards, our dashboards.
And what's the okay? So one question then I have is, suppose a client tries to book a bed, and there is only one bed available, and then there is another client at the same time tries to book the same bed. Then what happens?
That was the sole reason that we have opted for MySQL. So it won't happen, because SQL gives the guarantee of atomicity, and there will be a transaction isolation. It won't. So it will first take a lock on that particular row, and then it will simply return. So all those things in the reservation, it will be one transaction. So it won't happen that like two people are able to mutate one particular row.
No, but it can still happen, right? Like two people click the button at the same time. Then what happens?
Yeah, people, they can do it, but here at the end of the day, the transaction will happen in the database, right? Somewhere. So there will be only one. If a thread already is executing it, the second thread, it won't allow the second thread to execute it.
All right. So can you go back to that requirements that you have written there? So you have done the reservation and cancellation, and then so how do you, again, going back to this, not much downtime and horizontal scalable. So let's discuss a little bit about that. So how do you maintain there is no downtime or very little downtime?
As yeah, so for that we have multiple app servers. We do not have one single point of failure. We have multiple app servers behind our load balancer. So even if our one of our app servers goes down, our like services will still be up. Coming to database, we can have master slave replication here. Master slave replication. Master slave replication for like if a particular database goes down, then slave can simply pick that up after failover. So for that we can make it horizontally scalable and not much downtime. So there will be a like slight delay when there is failover happens, and it will just simply switch to another database itself. And for the service side, if a particular while serving a request, app server goes down, so then it will give 5 access, and next time he makes a request, he will be routed to some other app servers.
And what is the role of this load balancer in front of a database?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get that. Can you please repeat?
Applications and one in front of database. So what is the role of?
Yeah, so I was keeping this for like if in future I want to shard our data, then we can like our like what you call aggregation and partitioning of the data, it can happen on this particular layer. So this is the abstract layer between our app servers and the database. So anything that we want to do in between, we can do it here. So if we have multiple databases on behind that, like if we have a lot of data coming in and we shard it, then we can recite that particular common logic here in this particular LB.
Okay, I guess we are at 44 minutes, so that's all I had for my questions.
What is the difference between that soft reserve and hard reserve?
Yeah, so soft reserve is basically soft reserve will happen only for 10 minutes. And if within 10 minutes, our payment token has not given a success response, I'll just simply abort this request and then make this seat available. The same thing that happens in the Book My Show.
You are using MySQL DB, right? So in the MySQL DB, you can lock that row itself, right? So instead
so
of any soft reserve extra.
So, but we can keep that particular logic in our this service layer itself.
I think if this interview is over, the normal convention is to do the feedback portion first, right?
Shall I stop the sharing screen share?
Is it other than interview can other person can ask questions, right?
Sure.
Okay, so apps 1, apps 2, apps has 3. Sorry, 3. So the question I have is, how are you doing auto scaling by manual? I can see you have built a dashboard out of all the apps, and if CPU or memory is increased, you can actually manually do a dashboard. Manually scaling the app. So the question I
Well,
have,
actually, first we have to do an assessment, right? First, the candidate does a self-assessment. Then all the audience will give their feedbacks if they have, and then Varun will give his feedback, and then we can ask questions. That is what the format we follow.
okay, so that's why I asked
Yeah, please
first.
actually let first Nitish do his self-assessment. Okay, what he felt about it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then our audience will give their feedback.
Okay, so I asked this question, but no one replied. So that's
No
why.
problem. I think Asim is still on mute. So let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so according to me, it was okay. I was not able to manage things on time. And apart from that, I think there are few things I missed, like these arrows and how the refund service will work, or notification service we can add. There are few components that I missed. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's all from me.
Yeah. Anyone from audience wants to give any feedback to interviewer or the interviewee? Anyone?
I may I speak? So I just have a small piece of feedback. So I understand that, I mean, you added load balancers, cache, a lot of these other components that allow availability, allow, you to scale up, and you added multiple instances of the app servers. I think before doing all of these things, it would be good to ask the interviewer, how many read requests can I expect? How many write requests can I expect? And what is the rate of growth of data in my database? I think asking these questions, and then if the interviewer says, yes, those are going to be really high, then at that point, you can go ahead and say, this is how I'm going to handle such a high volume of requests. But I think overall you did a great job. So congrats.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarath. Yeah.
I don't understand load balancer before database.
Yeah, so the motive behind this was like, am I allowed to speak now, or we can discuss later?
Yeah. Basically,
I'll
let's
just
finish
go
all
with one more
the
feedback.
feedback.
I
Please,
think
yeah.
the interviewer, my feedback is that, okay, hold on. Yeah, my feedback is the interviewer did a good job in directing the candidate again and again away from high scalable thing, because the interviewer was repeatedly said that this is not a high throughput system or high query per second or high transaction system. So he did a good job. Yeah, I don't have any feedback for the candidate, but this was the feedback I had for the interviewer. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Sudhakar. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, Leon, you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I want to understand the, like, first the arrow. It does not make sense to me why it go from load balancer to the client. That's number one. Was it supposed to go from the client to the load balancer? And then my second question is, could you explain the query per second, what it does for the monitoring?
Yeah, so we can have we will be getting our reserve and unreserved APIs, right? Cancellation and these queries, these API hits. So we can track how many we are getting it, and we can just publish it into some monitoring system.
For what purpose?
For like scalability, like how many, if we want to decrease the number of instances.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Yeah. Any
Yes,
feedbacks? Yeah, I think Leon,
I
this was a
just
question. Let's keep this parked for some time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I have one more
Um,
I have feedback. So
Go ahead.
I think one of the person asked said the same feedback, like the throughput of the system, probably the read and write. Based on that, I think we can put a ballpark number, and then we can decide how many app servers we need. Like we needed 30 containers if you deployed in container or EC2. Like I think that will be a and we expect like these many requests. We expect like a 60% throughput, or sorry, 60% memory, or 80%, sorry, 60% CPU utilized for this many containers. That some kind of a ballpark number. We get these many requests, these many containers we need. Each container consume these many requests. Based on that, the CPU will be 60, something like that. So that is a one feedback.
I have one more piece of feedback, and I think this might be really useful. So you talked about consistency, and that consistency is really important, but you do have a cache which might result in stale values. And I think it would be good to address that, how you would maintain consistency despite having a cache and avoid stale values, number one. Number two, you have a master slave replication model, which means that, again, based on how many read replicas you have, you can have some sort of replication lag, right? And because of that, let's say one of the read replicas is not up to date or is not in sync with the leader, you might get stale results there as well. I think these are two points which negatively affect your consistency constraint. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it is some sort of feedback, also some deep dive, right? So we can address some of those things later, if you don't mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But the feedback part was good, yeah.
Yeah,
Any
one of my was like when the interviewer, poke for some information, he want to ask in certain direction, and I think the interviewee is still on his flow, so it seemed like he refused to answer the question and say, let he complete his flow, his thought first before he answer the question. And it could be he could be going the wrong direction.
Yeah. Thanks, Leon. Yeah.
Hey everyone, this is Pratik here. Maybe I joined late, but I see few things like maybe the data modeling, right, is kind of felt missing to me. I mean, maybe this is that one diagram that I'm only seeing. Then what type of cache mechanism, right? Maybe is it like write through or write aside or write back, right? And I don't see. I feel there is some relation missing between the way the cache, the soft reserve, and then the DB, right? How are you kind of taking care of cache invalidation and all that? That's one. And yeah, in terms of DB, right? As I said, data modeling, and is it like SQL or no SQL? Which DB? That I don't know if it was talked about. So those are a few things.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, some of them were addressed, I think, but yeah, we could actually, and that was a good input also for the interview. Yeah. Yeah, anyone else?
Just a thought or feedback. I don't know is it a valid one, but as per my experiences, including a Kafka here, it'll make more complicated the interview, because I know Kafka, they will can ask plenty of other questions, right? How the replication factor you work, so I don't know. So those kind of making, we can actually replace a small queue mechanism rather than using a Kafka. Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I'm just agreeing with one of the feedback which was given some time back, that when the interviewer asked something, the candidate said that, you know what, can you wait? Let me just finish my whatever I was saying through. Yeah, I agree with the earlier feedback that this can impact negatively. Normally, when somebody interrupts, I mean, it was very clear that this interviewer was a very patient guy and he's not somebody who interrupts continuously. In that case, the candidate should have answered his question right away and then moved on with his design. This happens a lot in other places too. When you're giving some presentation to a group of people and somebody very high at a very high level, a managing director or somebody asks a question, because probably they know the whole flow. They just want an answer to their question. Sometimes people answer right away and move on with the presentation. And some people say, you know what, can you please wait? I have something a few slides down later which answers this. It's better to give a one-line answer and be done with it, at least that you tried, instead of like spending 5 minutes, just give a one-line answer. Otherwise, like, it depends on the ego of the interviewer. So it's not a good idea.
Yeah, it's a very valid input. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Anyone? Chandan, I see you. Okay, if no one, yeah, Praveen,
Yeah, hi.
please
This
go
is
ahead. Yeah.
Praveen here. I think the interviewee and interviewer did pretty good. And the interviewee actually went down to table levels, which is good. Only at some point, there were some questions like he went to bed, patient, no, hospital and reservation, but some of the more, if he wants to go into detail, right, he should go to patient and enter payment and different kinds of information also, uh, or else he can just keep it there. Second feedback is in the when you're creating the reserve, you can actually pass some parameters or what input it's going to take. Like if you want to go into detail, like what will be the JSON request for that reserve bed, you can add that. And someone mentioned earlier the cache and the soft reserve. You can just say that the cache and soft reserve will work similar to what existing travel reservations or any of the um, ticketing reservations work, and it's a right through right forward. There's some strategies of cache that you can also mention that, so the interviewer will know that you know about those cache strategies, so that will actually tie the picture of cache and the soft reserve, um, so that there won't be any questions of stale beds. And another thing is you mentioned 100K transactions per minute, right? Generally, hospitals have limited beds, so we don't need that much of high availability, no high throughput, but we just always need high availability and accuracy of the data. And there was some talk about the HIPAA laws and how will you um, protect the DB, because for a patient, right, that information is very critical. It has lots of sensitive information. I know it didn't come as part of a reservation, but you should also talk to the interviewer that we will store the DB in a way that it is um, HIPAA certified and it is out of scope of the interviewee interview.
What's
So
that HIPAA clause?
that way you
Sorry.
know that he knows it, but you're not going to go into that. Thank you.
Hi, just one question. What is that HIPAA clause?
HIPAA laws is basically
It's in
all the
US
laws,
mostly.
patient information is secure and confidential and privacy. So you have to maintain that.
Okay.
I don't know what it's called in India, but in USA it's called HIPAA.
Okay.
So similarly, there's an Indian law also to protect patient information, patient consent information. So only patients can see the information.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thanks, Praveen. Yeah, and actually, it's for Nitish as well as for Varun. Take this feedback as constructive feedback, but it's learning for not only you, for all of us, you know. Okay, and if we have no one in the audience, Varun, could you please give your feedback now?
So first of all, Nitish, this is great because you told me that you have 3 years of experience with that. This is amazing. I mean, so that's one thing, and you have great understanding of different layers of this application life cycle, and you started well. So, and some of the things I think Lan and Sudhakar mentioned earlier, that when I was asking you a question, and to me, and it's one criticism, but I think it's good for you to know right now that um, when I ask this question, I have specific things in my mind where I want to, I want you to focus on that, right? Because we have only 45 minutes, and then it felt to me like you have this set pattern, like this is how I'm gonna attack this problem, and then be it any problem, I'll just go with this flow. And so what happened in the end is that I was within the given time, I was not able to ask or I should say, concentrate on a specific piece of this problem where, let's say, I wanted to talk about, let's say, cache strategies, or I want to talk about database replication strategies, or maybe something else, depending upon from where the interviewer is coming from, right? So those are the things to keep in mind, I believe, when we are in the interview, that where does the interviewer wants us to focus rather than just going with that set flow, because maybe I don't want you to talk about those APIs at that low level. Yeah, I mean, you know about it, that's very good. But uh, when I say, like, let's first do the diagramming and let's first understand what the problem is, right? So that will be my advice. But other than that, it was great. Good learning, probably for me as well as an interviewer. That's myself.
Yeah, Varun, yeah. Thanks for the feedback and everyone. Yeah, I'll keep those things in mind. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Varun. And it was a really great session, Nitesh as well as Varun. You both did a good job. And also audience who will give the feedback. It was a great feedback. And I think now let's open for any discussions, whatever we have, and any details of the system. Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to add, like when I asked this question, like how about two people clicking the button at the same time? And so once you gave me that answer, right, like this is the reason why we got MySQL, right? And I said, okay, I understand that part, but still I'm asking the same question, right? What happens when two people are clicking the button at the same time? So probably you have to think like, okay, I have already told the interviewer this is MySQL is the reason, but then he's still asking. That means there is something else here, and I believe you have already mentioned Kafka and other queuing service there, which is fine. But then in this case, I was trying to bring our attention to the piece where we can queue our requests and then make sure the right person get the bed. So for example, a person who's got fever versus a person who has a heart problem, right? So we want to make sure that we give bed on the basis of priority. So we can get the discussion in different direction if we start asking more questions. So that is another one feedback that I just wanted to add there. I have that in my notes. I forgot earlier. So that's another thing.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. Thank you. Okay, so we want to start with any discussions anyone had earlier about the system. And
I
Nitish,
just
just
want
keep the
to
system.
answer. I just want to answer one thing, that to avoid multiple hits to the same from the same client, you can disable the send button once you send the request, so that, or reservation, so that you won't see the call second time. Similar to how you do a bank payment, the button gets disabled while the transaction is happening. That's one way. Um, unless the client actually refreshes the page, then again it will come back. But if the page is or app is still there, you can disable the button while the backend is working. That's what we did for our systems. Thank you.
I have a question for the for everyone in the group. So one of the questions that was asked is, what if all the app servers go down at the same time if they belong to the same availability zone? And the answer was, we could place the app servers in different regions so that if one data center goes down, then you still have another data center. Is there a better solution to this problem? Because I think placing app servers far away from the user will increase latency, or maybe those are just passive or active backups. Like, is there a better solution to this question?
So in my experience, actually, what I noticed in different companies, they use a multi-region. Then if one data center is down, they can have another data center. So I don't have anything on another solution.
I think the focus was on consistency and partition, right? So if it go down, then because it consistency, then we just say it's not available. Otherwise, let's say suppose we redirect it to another data center, then not only increase the latency, but it also like the replication of data from one center to another center, and also that some transaction, some incoming, in progress transaction from the current data center might not available on the other one, right? I think that the requirement was more of consistency than availability.
Yeah, that is okay. But availability also should be a very important one in this case, isn't it? So if the system is not available, I know a consistency is still has to have a higher precedence, because you don't want to have any inconsistent data at all, because a bed is allocated, so bed has to be allocated, isn't it? Okay. Nitish, could you please keep that whatever you're sharing the diagram just open for some time till people actually finish that discussion, if you don't mind.
So I had one another question. Normally beds cannot be booked by patient directly. The hospital staff has to do it. If that constraint we have, so we don't have many terminals which can book, probably the check-in counter at the branch, maybe one or two check-in counters. How does that impact the design? Because the number of clients have gone down drastically, no?
Yeah, that is a question. Viraj, sorry, Varun, do you have any insight on that? But actually, you see, it's patient can also ask for a admission, isn't it? So if he knows, he can always,
No,
anyway, it has to
normally,
go.
I mean, it's fresh in my mind because my dad got admitted. So the way it works is, at least in India, they just give you an option. Do you want a single occupancy bed, a double occupancy, or a 4 occupancy room? Those are the only options patients get. And then the patient says, okay, I'm fine with a single occupancy room.
but that's still done through the portal, right? Or you're saying somebody is sitting there and doing it manually?
Yeah, that's right. So you go to the hospital, you go to the first to the ER or the casualty ward, and from there they decide, okay, it's time to admit to the hospital. And then the check-in counter person will just ask you, do you want a single occupancy bed, a double occupancy, or a 4-person bed?
Right. So that is what I think that is what we are trying to design here. If you have to do that through this portal, you're right in the sense that we may have something here where we can say that we can give that option to the patient. So instead of saying that the bed type, we can say the room type. But again, here I think there is no right or wrong answer. It's the way we are doing this discussion, and bed type, room type are all good answers to this, whichever way we want to. But at the end of the day, many clients can do the same thing, right? So one thing we could have done earlier was to ask an interviewer like how many users we are expecting. Maybe 5,000 users, 10,000 users in all we are talking about, not more than that. So that can tell us what can be the load on the system.
I did not mean to add room type to the design. What I meant was that the number of clients who can do this reservation is actually even more limited. Only the hospital staff can do it, right? If that were to be the constant, how would this design change? For example, if you have 3 branches, maybe there is only 6 terminals at each branch which can do the booking, maybe only 20 clients, let's say.
I think his focus was trying to, address the thing about the concurrency part. So therefore, maybe even if it is the way you say, maybe more reasonable to do, or maybe more practical. But he was trying to see if we could actually tweak the whole problem statement in such a way the concurrency is the most important thing what we need to handle over here and how it will be handled. That is what I think. What
Yeah,
was having in mind.
basically here the client here how we like during the interview we thought the client was actually someone on a mobile phone or someone on a website, but based on this discussion looks like client is actually sitting in the hospital, and the user of the client here is probably some receptionist or someone, right? It's not the actual customer who is actually using it. So then there's only very limited clients there. So for that, do we actually need a load balancer? Maybe we may need it, but not a full-fledged productionalized like with millions of transactions, correct?
So yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I asked this question about limited number of client terminals by hospitals, does it change the design, let's say in this way, that if this were to be the constraint, then the design would be each branch will have its own app server, which will decide with its own, which will decide its own allocation of its own branch. So 3 branches will have its own 3 app servers. And then these 3 app servers in each branch will be communicating with a central database so that other branches know what's happening in the other branch, which means the app server will be physically in each branch rather than in the data center. So I was thinking, will the design change if our requirements change?
I think it will change a little bit. We don't need that robust of a LB here, right? Because we don't need to scale this to multiple geography or things like that. We can keep it on-prem here or on the hospital premises, and only when you're connecting to the cache or the backend that can be centralized, correct? And everything else you can actually keep it local. I'm just thinking out loud. If we don't have that kind of requirement, then we can just have some
I would
client
say
side.
even for, I mean, we don't want, I mean, having an app server in a remote location away from the hospital's physical building I don't think it's a good idea because this is an important thing, right? With the network glitches can happen, network connectivity can go down.
Or we can even think of multi-tenant system, right? So where different hospitals can onboard to this solution as it's like a service, right? So if I am coming up with a hospital and I want this system, I don't want to build it from scratch. So if I think that way, so this I can see this as a multi-tenant system where people can onboard and use it. In that way, I think this whole solution is on cloud, right? So you can even think that way also.
No, what I was thinking was when I say on-prem, all the three hospitals or four hospitals are in the same VPN, right? So there, once the client is already in the VPN of the secured network, you may be in different one, maybe in Delhi, Hyderabad, or Noida or whatever place it is, or different locations. They can be in the same network, so all this can be within the on-prem. So we don't need to go to cloud or outside. We don't have any network.
I think it's the question between whether you want to do it all the thing from scratch, or you just want to onboard to a solution already present. It's like a this solution as a service, right? So
Solution as a service, SaaS. Okay.
Yeah.
But
So
think about it, right? If you're running a hospital, which option would you take?
it's a choice that you are making, right? So it's not necessary that data security and privacy you also get it in cloud. It's not like you're gonna lose it, right? AWS can do that for you, encryption and all this stuff. So
yeah, this is very good point. Like I've never thought about it, but if someone has some working in some medical can actually chime in what is the current approach they take for limited number of hospitals.
I mean, I would definitely, if I were the hospital owner, I think I would rather have each app server in each branch. Sometimes there is loss of power and hospitals run on generator. There is no network connectivity outside the building. It's only within the building. Then what happens if clients come? I mean, there are some places where there is so much power disruption, like the hospitals run on generator every second day for a few hours. So
yeah. Like what happened in Boston, right? Last year, there was a ransomware attack and they could not admit any patients to the hospitals across the Boston and New York area. So because all their thing was on AWS and they could not connect and all their database were locked in. So if that is the scenario, then what you say on-prem, they could have at least, even then they were in ransomware attack, but they could have done something.
yeah, if you have something local, you can always do something. Maybe you can go to the database, take a printout of something, or check the rooms or something.
Yeah, but then the same thing what you said, it might be a power failure also in some cases. And then you have to
normally hospitals have generators, so they can bring up that building. But what happens is when there is a power loss, it's the whole area which loses power. In which case, hospital is running, but they cannot connect to the network to the remote end. But
yeah, when cyclone or storms.
But if you have a patient out of the network and he still wants to admit, so that can also happen some cases like that because you have a super specialty, so someone in a different network, maybe from a different city, actually wants to admit that. So that can also, you don't want to, confine yourself only for
we
a
are trying
particular hospital.
to, yeah, true. But this is the lesser of the two evils, right? Rather than having nothing, at least we can handle our own branch at least.
Yeah, but there you might lose some business. Yeah, so that is true. Both have pros and cons. Yeah, that's right. Okay, anything more on this? But yeah, this was really a good one, right? The way Nitish came up with the whole thing, the whole diagram.
I like the way he drew the diagrams quickly. That is pretty good.
Yeah.
But only Leon mentioned one point, right? The arrows, 1, 2, 3, and that.
Yeah.
it's kind of like when we think client, we generally see the client is looking for get, but here the arrows are a little bit like it's coming from one is directly coming to client. Then how is it coming? Two is the arrows is little bit you need to look into that, Viraj.
Oh yeah, that was 6 and 1 actually should be swapped, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what the other if he said because everything is serialized and all that, so you don't need to worry about the concurrency part, isn't it? So that is what he said. But then we have, see, if we have the soft reserve and hard reserves and all those things. So if soft reserve, it means that you are trying to hold that particular whatever the record or maybe the table in the database for some number of time, 10 minutes. So then are you not going to lose some sort of availability for that many minutes?
I think it's not availability, right? It's just like soft block is you don't want someone to lose that seat, right? It's like airline booking also. It says only for 24 hours you can like block it. Then afterwards it'll automatically unblock, correct? So similarly here also for 10 minutes, if there's no activity or something, then it will be removed from the cart.
Okay, so there won't be any problem with availability anywhere.
No, I don't think so. It should.
Okay.
And I'll see also this is a good design because sometimes the payments gateway may be slow or something, right? So they're giving enough time for it to respond.
So in the soft reserve, you'll be putting those many whatever those reservation IDs or whatever it might be in some queue for some time. So that actually will have to be elaborated more, isn't it? The whole soft reserve itself will be a sort of a more discussion.
Exactly, yeah. But at least
Why
he
can't it be just
mentioned
the state of the reservation?
it
It's
may
just
be pending or
yeah. So why do we need queue for the? I didn't understand that probably. So this is for like removing that or resetting it back to its original state. Is that what you mean by queue?
after maybe if the payment is done, right, it'll the soft reserve will change from pending to confirmed.
Maybe Santosh suggested to have queue, right? So I didn't understand why we need a queue there.
No, I was just thinking what it might be, because I just really wanted to see if there is some more the whole flow of what soft reserve is, because it's not so straightforward. Only the queue, what I'm saying is because you might have many such patients, maybe, for the same bed. I know it's not so practical in this scenario, but if you had a different application altogether, so we'd be more interested. Some few more contentants for a particular row in a table, something like that. So then you still have to give a fair chance and for all of them, isn't it? So where do we keep them? Either we keep them in the queue or maybe keep somewhere else. We just if
So
it's
what
one
do you
record,
want
it's
to
fine.
what do you want to keep in the queue, Santosh?
No, if there are about not only 2 users, maybe 3 users contending for a same bed. So then if you are actually working on one of them, so the 2 guys might actually still have to be kept on hold. Right. So if the first person is able to say, okay, I don't want to book a bed. Okay. Maybe that is a really not good scenario though. But then he gives up and then the second one actually starts doing it and he also doesn't, for some reasons. So the third should be given a chance to actually book.
So in that case, just assume, right, we only have 3 people are actually, let's assume we have 1 room available and 3 people are contending, correct? So that's your scenario. So first person when he books the room, it's soft reserve, correct? And then he does the transaction 3 and then he does the transaction 4 and the payment fails. Correct? So it may be within 10 minutes or it may be after, or he didn't do the payment within 10 minutes. So then why in that scenario, when the second person is looking, it will show as if the all hospital is booked. So it won't even let them add it. Only when the scenario is after 10 minutes, when second and third patient are looking for the room, it will show both of them. Then there may be a race condition, not race condition. Who clicks the button first, right? In that, whoever in that you can probably keep them in a queue, or what other thing you can do is first when the three people are looking, add all three in the queue, and if the first one doesn't succeed, then pick the second one. If the second one doesn't succeed, then pick the third one. That is another way you can use the queue in this same condition.
Yeah, so the queue will actually do a fairness.
Yes, queue
Yeah.
will first come first serve. Yes.
Yeah, because clicking the button, the race condition, whatever it might be, so that won't actually give us a good fairness, and there might be some legal issues.
Exactly. Yeah. In
Okay.
that scenario, we can have queue between app server and the soft reserve between three, right? We can probably put that in a queue, and then there will be another service which will actually read the queue and do the soft reserve and DB and everything. So we can add one queue and another app between there, between the three.
Yeah. I think it's similar to the way we always think about like the ticket masters and book my show and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they there actually use something else in the queue instead of using a queue, maybe in hash map or some linked hash map. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Why do you need hash map there?
No, I'm just saying. I think they. I vaguely remember they were using some linked hash map instead of using a queue. But yeah, queue is also a better way to use it.
Yeah, queue is simple actually. But only thing with queue, you also need to have a listener and a publisher. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one other thing I was thinking was, how is this design different from a hotel booking thing, except for the number of requests per second?
In fact, hotel booking, it will be that the scalability or maybe the number of users will be more. Here, the users are very less, and it's very small system that way. And if we really expand the system, then actually can be used for a hotel booking.
Okay, so maybe the database will be different. That's the only thing I can think of. No SQL maybe.
I think the clients are different here, right? Client here in the hospital system is the receptionist. Client in the hotel booking, maybe receptionist, but it's in general, it's like Expedia or something, right? Some a price line, some other. So it may be us, one of us using as a client. So if that is the case, then it has to be scalable and geolocation and all that.
Yeah, makes sense. So surely it will be a very different design. Even if we start with this, and then we'll have to address all those things about the scalability, even the availability in that case.
Yeah, the point before 1 and 6 will change and the LB will change. Backends may still have similar functionalities.
But Sudhakar was saying backend we can actually go away from SQL to NoSQL to address the availability issue, or maybe.
Actually, most of the systems, right, wherever payments is informed, they use some kind of SQL only, as much as possible. Wherever
But we'll have two different databases probably, right? One for payment and one for beds available, or hotel beds available. One can be SQL, one can be NoSQL.
Yeah, the availability cache and all, those are NoSQL kind, but the ones where actual reservations and all, they generally use SQL only.
Very good point. Yeah. So you'll have to have a hybrid, both of them.
I have a
Like
separate. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, I just want to ask you: is it when you go for an interview? Is it because I didn't see any security related topic here. So whenever I go for an interview, it's good to talk about security as well, or is it just we can ignore?
I think for interview, you need to know about it if the interviewer asked, but generally if you get into security and everything, right, it will take at least 5 to 10 minutes more. So people will assume that these are secured at the gateway level, and but if you try to add that and that authentication, authorization, and anything like that, then it will take more time.
Okay.
But
So you
in
mean to say,
interview, you
Praveen,
can,
basic things you should still know, isn't it? That is what
yeah,
you're trying to say.
yeah, you should know, but you should tell the interviewer that this is out of scope. So while you're designing itself, you say that security is out of scope. But
Okay.
if you want to know anything, I can talk, but it is out of scope.
Okay. Okay.
Unless you're specifically interviewing for that particular position, which is more in
Yeah.
that area. Yeah.
So normally this is about 30 minutes interview, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
But if you're senior or principal, right, then you definitely need to know all aspects of it in detail.
Correct.
No
Correct.
questions asked. Um, Irrespective of whether you're front end, back end, you definitely need to know security and DVs and all the caching and everything.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So any more questions?
So I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the mechanism for soft reserving and then processing payment and hard reserving, I don't think that makes sense for a hospital. I think for a hospital, even a payment, the concern is not that the payment falls through and we want to make it available for someone else. If a payment falls through, we probably just want to keep retrying the payment or send them a mail and have them paid in a month or something like that. So the only mechanism that would be there would be hard reserve. And then maybe we have another table that keeps unpaid accounts. And maybe they go to a collection agency if the patient never pays, etc., etc.
Okay, yeah. Because looking at the scale of the system also, it can be handled. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, one way to look at it, maybe this one, what we are talking about is also a design. So we could go away with the soft reserve part.
So one question I have when we go for an interview, you should always think about the company can grow. Suppose we have a 10 requests now, or 10 terminals or something. So it can grow to 100. Is that prospective? We have to design the system, or is it okay to talk about? It can be a constraint.
I think you should be ready for the scalability because that is what always will happen, Unless now, if he's talking about a domain or maybe a particular app which is only limited to hospital, because we know hospitals are not connected all over the geography. They're always limited to a country and a specific region. So they can't be. So his intention was very clear. It's going to be always a very small system, but this system can be used at many places. So if you are a software vendor or maybe a company who provides only hospital solutions, for you actually just developing this, and what are your challenges that he was trying to understand.
Okay.
So, but if it's a system other than that, like booking the hotels and all that, for surely then scalability and all those things, they make a very important decision in the design.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to prepare for that.
Yeah, hotels, it depends, right? Whether you are building it, you can build the same system for a hotel if your hotel is not connected to other hotels' central reservation system. But if your hotel is connected to central reservation system, then you have to then it's a different design.
Yeah, the question is like generic, right? I mean, if someone is asking build a school management system, so we should think about that their school will have multiple branches, so she should scale up, right, sometime, right? So so we should have in mind before we start building this kind of architecture, right? I mean, that is a generic thought, right? I mean, I don't know, just asking. Okay.
Yeah,
No,
but
that is
one thing you
perfect
have to
fine.
also think is the cost, right? So if at all you are having a hospital of your own, correct? And you just have one hospital or two hospitals in an area, and you want to build this, how much can you spend on this, right? Let's take an example here itself, right? If I want to build this system, let's put some numbers to it, right? How much will it cost to own the DB and LB and the creation of the apps, dashboards, monitoring, load balancers, and the client for 1 year? And if you are a mom and dad kind of hospital, right, in a village, you have two branches in two villages, how many can you actually, how much can you invest in it? So you should also design on who you are designing this for. And if that is the case, how will you design it, right? And how will that impact? Because this is what was asked in one of the interviews, like, how will you design for the client? You can design for the performance and optimization in cloud, but if you don't have that kind of if the client is not ready to pay that money, how will you scale it down?
Okay.
Because some of the things are too expensive for lots of if you just have like five reservation, five hospital beds in one area, five hospital other, for you to create the world's best system may be a overkill.
Yeah, so that system is very small in the sense, right? And the
Yeah,
way you are saying, it won't make a business sense to go with the cloud services or anything
you
like
de-
that. Mhm.
you definitely need a system to store and reserve and everything, but you don't need all the bells and whistles. uh, I don't say there's much bells and whistles here other than load
No,
balancers.
but in that case, what will happen? Someone will ask you to start it with the designs like that, very small one,
Mhm.
and then would say, instead of this mom and dad, whatever you said, okay, this hospital. So why not take a mid-scale hospital, and then that hospital we have designed, and you are a software vendor actually developing say, hospital management systems. So how do you handle that if someone like Apollo comes in, or maybe Evergreen Hospital comes to you,
Mhm.
and you provide solutions for all of them. So you could use the same similar building blocks what you are using for all of them, and only based on whatever the budgets people will have and the requirements, you can actually scale down and scale up. But still, you will have to use a cloud service or maybe some other services which are more stable, and you don't have to worry about the infrastructure, isn't it, when you're developing it. So how do you handle that? So that requirement will slightly be different.
Yeah. So what they do is generally all this small scale hospitals, they have this third party software, they'll just install it. And how I know is I have few friends who have clinics,
Mhm.
and they actually just install that software, and that has all the patient portfolios, hospital medicines, operations, and all the pricing, and it also has all the taxes, everything that you needed for to run the hospital is there in that software, and all the medicines that they do, and actual price, and price that's shown to the customer, and the billing codes and everything. So they generally do all the reservations, everything via that one system, hospital management system.
Okay. The patient monitoring and hospital management systems, right? Yeah, the
Yes,
small ones, the very small clinics, and also for the small hospitals. And
yes,
then
yes.
you have the other ones like the mid-scale hospital and the bigger ones. Yeah.
Yeah. For the mid-scale hospital, so everything is done via that one application, and periodically that will upload it to a remote location, the database. So everything is part of a Windows web app. They have two locations, and both the locations they have this Windows web app done. There is no connectivity other than the data is backed up remotely.
Interesting.